Hi everyone. I'm going to be trying to give you a number of these kind of close-up demos. They're much harder to do to allow you to actually see the image that I'm creating than it is to do, let's say, a Panopto video, but that can't get us up close. So as I've said before, you're not going to get super high quality on this. You can probably already tell the sound on this is not phenomenal. But this is what we have to work with in this kind of really quick turning this class online. So in addition to the demos that I'll be giving you, I will also be supplying you with lots of more professionally done videos from YouTube. But every once in a while it just feels best if I give you one of these as well. So I'm going to do that here today. I'm just going to be talking about some of the really basic ideas that are associated with shading or modeling a form and the application of your pencil to the paper here. So when you read through the prompt, one of the things that is really essential to when you're shading, modeling, or using chiaroscuro, remember these are interchangeable terms, is to affect a movement of your hand that will allow you to cover up, in this case I'm dealing with a kind of uniform plane here, cover up a large area with strokes of my pencil that are slightly overlapping. And to do that, you're going to want to hold your pencil kind of flat to the paper at an acute angle rather than more upright. The more upright you hold it, the more linear quality you're going to get, lots of little lines. And to create smooth planes of a value, we want to avoid that. So you're going to hold that fairly flat, and again, you're going to affect a movement. Now, generally speaking, when you're applying this pencil, you're going to want to go one direction for a while and then change directions and so forth. Almost like you're doing a really tight version of what I had you do before, which is using cross-hatching and such. So I tend to hold my pencil way back from the tip. This allows me to have greater control over the pressure I place on the pencil, and then in a series of rapid movements, and I don't care about the contour line here, right? If I go outside of that, I can always erase it. I'm going to do slight movements here of a little bit of overlapping so that there's no white lines in between these. And after I get to a certain distance, I'm not going to fill up this whole plane, right? I am going to change the direction of my pencil and go over this again to minimize those lines even further, right? Now you can also, and I do this a lot, create little circles. You're just trying to minimize the line. So I'm going to darken this up, as I say in the prompt. You know, think of adding values as adding layers. You don't want to press as hard as you can right off the bat, even if you need a dark value. You basically want to build one layer on top of another. And now I'm just putting little circles so that I have no linear quality at all, right? Now, after I've applied some of this, if I could get you up close on this and maybe you can see, it looks kind of sketchy, and that's because I can still see the white of the teeth of the paper through it. To minimize some of that, you're going to use a blending tool. Now, there are a million different blending tools. Play around with them. They all have different qualities, but here's the big thing to think about. The smoother the blending tool, the darker the area that you touch up is going to remain, but it's, in other words, the opposite is true. If you use a paper towel that's really rough or you use a chamois that's really rough, it's going to pull off more material. But it also tends to be something that only blends an area in which you have really done a good job applying the darkness all over. In other words, if you're trying to use a tortillon as I am using here on an area that looks incredibly sketchy or very linear, you're going to end up with a very kind of, you're just going to kind of push those marks into the canvas or into the paper. That's the same thing here. When I use a tortillon, watch what happens if I push too hard. If I push really hard on this, I'm going to get a lot of streaky quality. So you're going to want to just, again, scratch the surface is what I usually say here to move that material around. And then after you've done this for a while, if you see areas that perhaps are still too dark and not very uniform, like what happened when I was pressing too hard, your kneaded eraser can be used, and if you just pat this on the surface, you don't even need to rub it, just pat it, it will take some of those areas off. Now, once you've blended something, oftentimes you're going to have to go back over these areas and add more material, because any blending activity is going to take some of the value away, right? Now again, I'm not going to try to do this perfectly here for this short video, but you can see I'm now adding another layer on that. It's getting uniform again. It looks pretty good. Another blending tool, of course, is a Q-tip. If you don't have your tortillons yet, this can work really well. It's pretty smooth. You can probably see on the tip there, I've already got some darkness. These blending tools, of course, can also be used as drawing tools once you've got them loaded up. Same thing with a chamois, although watch what happens with a chamois. It's very rough and just like a paper towel. If I use it on here and blend it around, it's going to do a pretty good job kind of blending that, but look at how light that gets immediately, right? And then I've got material here that if I wanted to, I could use this as a drawing tool over here to fill up a broad area with a very, very light value. Finally, as I said, don't worry about the contours of this. You can always go back with your workhorse eraser, this Mars plastic eraser, and if you get outside of the edges, you just go back. And again, you're drawing by erasing. Drawing is actually working both up and down, meaning that you start by adding materials, but you also use erasing to get your contours correct. The other thing I'm asking you to do here coming up is to create a sphere. And to create that sphere, the first way you're going to do it is not by cheating, but by helping yourself out by using a, something that's already circular to draw your contour line. So here I have a glass. As I said, somewhere around 3 inches is a good size to be able to put a number of these spheres on a piece of paper. So you put that sphere on there, very lightly draw around the outside. The reason you want to keep this fairly light is that you're going to have to erase part of this in order to make it look accurate. Once you've got that, you've got your contour line there, right? Now you're going to get some tutorials on this, so I'm not going to do the full tutorial of the sphere, but one of the things I want to absolutely emphasize is when you start drawing your sphere and then shading it in, start at the darkest area, either the cast shadow, whatever that might be, or the area that's furthest away from the light source. This will make more sense when you see the video intro of drawing a sphere. But you want to start over here, and now when you fill in this area, it's really useful to follow the contour lines when you're adding your shading. And part of the reason for that, instead of going straight up across like I did in the last one, is that if you think of a sphere as being darkest furthest away from the light source, with the exception of what's called reflected light, then as you're building towards the light source, you're getting incrementally lighter all the way up. And if you follow that contour, you can kind of keep reminding yourself as if each one of these areas is a separate zone, right? So here's your darkest zone, then it's slightly lighter and slightly lighter all the way up. Now it's a little bit more complicated than that, as I'll say, but that's a very important thing to be thinking about. Follow that contour. Once you've got that on, though, in order to minimize the look of line, you're going to want to change the direction of your pencil. And again, because a sphere's contour, is constantly kind of rounded, just think of applying these things in slightly circular ways. Again, after you put in some material, especially if you've got incremental areas in which you've got an area of extreme darkness moving towards lightness, when you start blending this, and again, I'm not going to do this whole thing, it would take too long and annoy the hell out of you in this super low production video. When you are using your blending tools, and in this case, I would never use a tortillon for something this broad. I would use a paper towel probably, or frankly, don't ever do it, but I would use my finger. And the reason you don't want to use your finger a lot is that it adds oils to the paper that over time start showing up in bad ways. But I'm going to use the tortillon now because it's just, well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to grab a napkin off my counter here, same kind of thing, and show you that when I now start blending, what I want to do is blend and kind of push into the next zone. So I'm going to follow that contour still, but I'm going to push into the next zone so as to start moving some of that material up into the next zone. And then you can see it started to get lighter again, so I'm going to come back here before I move into that zone and darken this up. And why do I want that darker? Because that darkest area sets my value scale. If this is the darkest and this area towards the light source is the lightest, then I know what I have to work in between, this darkest area and this lightest area. So once I get this dark again, I can start moving up to the next zone, and now I'm pushing my pencil even lighter to go in this area, again overlapping. When I get to these areas that I've already drawn, I want to be really careful that I don't have something that looks like this. And it only happens if you draw this really, really dark, right? And then you try to draw this area that's next to it and you draw just as dark, and you get this area in between the two that's even darker because you've gone over it twice, right? When you get to this kind of situation where you've got something of a an edge to your value, when you do this, be really careful on that and go light right up to that edge, right? So you have a minimum effect of that. Okay, so this is the basic starting point for the tutorial. When you're drawing these different objects, again, you got a pretty standard prompt here. You're going to have some other tutorials. Remember, it's all a matter of practice, and you can't speed this up. You have to go slow with this. The final thing that I want to show you is when you are drawing these circles, 3 of them, I think, is what I asked you to do by using that stencil, some kind of glass or something to draw it. And the last one, I'm going to ask you to draw freehand. This is just to practice your skills at this. Now, drawing freehand, if you just kind of do it right off the bat, maybe you'll have some good luck, I don't know. But mine tend to look kind of crummy like that, right? What I'd like you to do is to move your hand over the top of the paper over and over again without touching your pencil to the paper, right? In this case, you can, because you're drawing a line, you can have that pencil more upright. I want you to visualize a circle in your head, and then when you feel comfortable with that circle, I want you to go around a few times until you have something like this. This tends to work better for me. And then I want you to find the more perfect circle within that you drew. So in my case, I can see that this line out here, this one's no good. I'm going to get rid of this one right off the bat so it doesn't confuse me. I'm going to leave the other lines though because they help orient me to get a better circle, and I'm just going to go around here and try to figure out what is kind of a more accurate circle here by changing these contours a little bit. And then once I've got those, I'm going to go back in and erase the lines that were not accurate, right? The ones that don't work very well. So I've found that circle. This one looks pretty good. Putting that in, this line's not great, but I think it's close, so I'm going to take that out. Fix this a little bit. This line's too far on the inside, so I'm going to take that out as well. Remember, don't erase lines right off the bat. They can help orient you to getting the more perfect line in there, or the more perfect shape in there, until you got something more circular. If you're really having troubles with this freehand, just remember that a circle is equidistant from its center. So if I find the center, and by the way, there's a million ways to do this, I don't even need to get out a ruler. If I take out my pencil and I say, okay, there's that, and here's about the center line, and I put a dot in the center, then I can use my pencil and just, again, find that center and go, okay, it's that far from here, put my finger on this, go over here and say, is that close? Yeah, that's close. Uh-oh, this one's off. Look at it, it's a little further out than that. And I'll put a little dot there. And I'll keep doing that until I might have dots on one side that was a little bit off. And then I connect those dots to get a more perfect circle, right? Well, hopefully that's helpful. And with the rest of the tutorial videos, you have a good start on practicing your shading or modeling or chiaroscuro.